You look nice.
Thank you.
Gosh, you got dressed up for this, huh?
Yeah.
So sarcastic.
Right.
And then like straighten out the cord. Okay.
It works. And in my face.
What is that?
20 minutes later.
Let me get one more thing.
Oh my gosh. I've never seen you care so much about how you look until today.
You're trying to put me around the world.
Not around the world. Hey, you never know.
You never know.
Brace yourself. Because we're getting to the roots. What kind of questions you got?
I got some questions for you. So, I'm a deep thought thinker, so.
I know, which is why I think you're the right person to have this conversation with.
Okay.
I'm excited.
Are you? Or are you living in a little bit of fear? Because this is probably going to be uncomfortable, which is then uncomfortable means stepping out of your comfort.
Definitely.
What we talk about all the time is the next level of that is fear. So are you a little fearful of expose yourself to the world?
I think there's a little bit of fear of like the unknown and not, just being the unknown of like what people might say, if it's going to be received a certain way, hopefully the right way. But to be honest, I think I'm also growing into a space where the right person will hear it, and whoever is supposed to hear it, it's going to be for them, and to not worry about the naysayers and to be judged. Because I think when I think about those things, then I live in fear.
False evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
We created in our minds.
Yep. So I decided to not even like get super dressed up on this episode. I was like, I gotta just be me, and like being me is wearing confirmations. And so like today I wanted to wear a sweatshirt that says continue. So shout out to Sisterhood Designs for this sweatshirt. So I'm super excited. But they even have a message on just whatever you're living in, like continue to move forward, continue striving. And for me, I guess I'll get into that later, but just like what continue means. Okay. So.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and get to it. All right. So today I'll be your host, Michael O'Dupatan, from a Behind the Spotlight series on this series of Overcoming. And so we're going to explore some things today with Danielle and see how she's going to talk about how she's overcoming and what she's overcoming the last year.
Yeah.
And so I think this is going to be a really exciting episode. We talk about some things of becoming your authentic self, and what does that look like to become your authentic self and living that fully, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit. This year's been an interesting year.
Last year.
Yeah, over the last year. So let's talk about a few things. Talk to me about last year, and what were some of the big things that you had to address last year as far as the shift for you and you becoming who you are today.
It's a loaded question because like there's just so much that happened. I call it like year 27. Like year 27 was the year of transition. And that year I had to transition out of, my old self into new character, into new environment. And with that came a whole new shift in career, a shift in relationships, a shift in friendships. And so I think while I was shifting and transitioning, God was also trying to reveal a lot of things that was within me. So I was also growing and trying to figure out, like they say, trying to find yourself, right? Like that's a real thing,
right?
And I think I'm learning more and more that it's not an arrival. Like you have to continue it's a journey.
It is a journey. It's absolutely a journey. Let's talk about that. So we talk about most of the times, we got this thing that we often say that the flowers are blooming.
Yes.
But how do we get to the process of the flowers to bloom? You have to go through this process, transition, right?
Yes.
And so as we talked about, you say you went from old self to new self, and you know that you're becoming. And let's use this analogy as we talk about garden, all these different things, and what each person becoming a part of the garden. But that transition, I think that transition piece, we talk about what it takes to become who you are.
Yes.
But what is the transition like? What is the let's talk about in the transition of
Right.
you becoming a seed, planting a seed, and then shifting from that seed to a new form.
Yeah.
Right, and then we're in that new form.
Yes.
We say what? We have this new growth, right?
Yes.
What is
Got this new growth on me.
Right? So as you've transitioned,
yeah.
like, what is that new growth? One, tell us how that transition into becoming that new person
Oof, yeah.
has shifted you. And then what does it feel like to live in that new growth?
Yeah. Okay. So I feel like you said a lot, but I definitely have to, like, of course, share the story of like just what all took place. So a lot of people know that I was a former journalist. I worked at a local TV station and I was a journalist and a weekend anchor. And it was a long time dream that I had growing up, wanting to be on Good Morning America, wanting to, you know, strive to reach to the top. Like I always saw myself at Good Morning America. And so to see that that long time dream was like that door was closing on it, and to see that I'm transitioning into a new environment that is foreign, in a foreign country. First of all, like Topeka has always been foreign to me, but now it's becoming my home because, like, you know, even though I was fearful of what was on the other side, like he was also teaching me that I'm going to give you the desires of your heart, because all the things that you desire is all around you.
Absolutely.
But we always look for it on the outside. And so I think for me, even when I met you, I told you, I'm like, I got to climb the market. And you're like, why? You're like, why do you got to do that?
Right.
Like, why can't you build it here in Topeka?
Right.
And so because Topeka was a temporary space for me and
In your
location
mind.
in my mind,
Right.
I was like, I'm not going to be here long. Even when I first started dating you, I was like, I'm not going to be here long. So like, how is this going to work? You know? And you're like, okay, we'll see,
Right.
you know? And so then when I, you know, had the opportunity to now work for a multi-billion-dollar company, and I'm a TV host, and it's even interesting that I wanted to work for the top, you know, news station in the entire world, Good Morning America, #1. And then now, even being in Topeka, Kansas, I'm still being featured all over the world.
Yeah.
So many people don't know, but like basically what I do is I host financial advisors. They come to Topeka, Kansas, and I host their marketing commercials and TV shows and radio shows, and it airs wherever they're located. That can be Texas, Atlanta, Houston, you know, my hometown. I mean, really everywhere.
Right.
So to be honest, I think I did have a closed mindset when I first moved here, because I had one goal in mind, and that was to get out. And so to see that God had something else in mind was something that I was not trying to sign up for. And I didn't even want to see it.
Right.
So to, you know, again, switch my mindset and to switch my career, it was a very emotional time, because I was already uncomfortable being here. I was already uncomfortable in my mind settling for a space that I didn't pray for. And so I think that was like, well, how do I get comfortable here? And like, what is it that you're calling me to do here?
Right.
So I will say, though, that even though I was uncomfortable with where God had me, I knew it was where he called me.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, just because you don't agree with the location and what he's calling you to do, it doesn't mean that's not for you.
Right, absolutely. So in that space, and let me just kind of jump in here, because I think that this is where what all things you talk about as far as shifting mindset.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, same space when I was here, right? Like, and I told you a long time ago that I was trying to find my purpose here, right? And I feel like sometimes in life, we all have purpose, but we have to identify it.
Yeah.
And we have to understand where we're at and why we have that purpose in that place. And so I told you a long time ago, I didn't know why I was here. But I had someone tell me many years ago, said sometimes God places you in places, you don't know why you're there, but you're there to do God's work.
Yeah.
And so God placing you here, and then having that space where you're like, I don't think I'm supposed to be here, and this isn't for me, and this is temporarily.
Yeah.
But you don't know, or you might not know how doing the things that you're doing now may be affecting people all around you, right?
Right.
And so going through that process of shifting your mindset, right? How has those experiences of being here, right, as you're understanding now more of what your purpose and what you may have to do while you're here?
Yeah, definitely.
How is that shaping you into becoming the person you are today?
So I would definitely say, like, now in this space and where God has me, I don't think I would be able to learn the experiences and the education that I've been getting here in Topeka somewhere else. And maybe I'm saying that now because I've lived through just a year, but then even within that year, I feel like Topeka has so much growth and beauty here. And I think sometimes it's overseen or it's overlooked because, you know, Topeka has this myth that there's nothing to do here, there's nothing here, but it's like people say that because they're not looking for it. I was in a space where I was searching. I was literally like, what is here? Like, use me. And I think we have to even be careful in saying the words use me, because you want to be used, but then you get used and then you don't want to do the work.
And it doesn't feel good.
And then it doesn't feel good. Yeah. So I think I was like just a diamond that was really just getting like crushed and pressed and like pressured under, like literally like the pressure cooker, because I was asking for something, but then he would like not give it to me in a way that I wanted it. Right. But it was in the way that it would still come back with an experience or an education that, you know, it's stuck with me. So I think transitioning into a new career was a very prominent time for me because I had to learn a new language. I mean, literally, I don't know anything about finances. Like, God knows I don't know anything about retirement. I am 28 years old, and you're like, oh, I'm going to take you and I'm going to put you in a financial marketing company that talks about retirement. Like, what? Like, that doesn't make sense, you know? And so for me, it was just like trying to understand what he was doing. But I really do think that now I look back and not even just my career, but Topeka in general was, I had to learn that this was my hiding space. And over time, your hiding space becomes your striving space. And so like for people to just not understand what's going on around you, like sometimes you really just have to pause and say like, okay, what is it that you want me to learn here? And I think I was asking God the wrong questions. Like, to be honest, I think I was so worried about my desires and like the things that I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was to get out. Like that was the only thing I wanted to do. And even when I was transitioning, because I was like, you know, looking for more income, my parents were like, okay, well, if you're going to stay there, like you got to figure it out. And I'm like, okay. And so then I even felt a little bit regretful, like, okay, well, is this even for me? Now I'm making so much money. And it's like, okay, well, what else is here? Like I would still fall back into like this depression in my mind because what I was looking like at around myself, like during that time, was nothing that I wanted. But I think it was just my perspective.
Okay, so let me ask you this. You mentioned a few things. And so you said that you had to pause.
Yeah.
And this was your place where you realized that you had to like kind of sit, right? Yeah. And we talk about being in that space of being still. And sometimes you're in a space where you're always trying to get somewhere.
Yes.
But when you're always searching, as you said, you were searching for something.
Yeah.
And I tell people sometimes that it's not always about what you're searching for.
Yeah.
Outwardly.
Right.
The search needs to be
inwardly.
Right. You need to be searching within you.
Yes.
And so when you start to search within you, that takes time to sit still. What we always say, like, you don't have to try to become somebody.
Right. Become a nobody.
Become nobody. And when you become nobody,
then you become somebody.
Right. So talk about this time of obscurity for you, where like the pressure cooker, right?
Yeah.
That is the space of being still. When you're still and you're working on yourself and you're identifying those things that have created you in this mindset of I always have to be searching for something.
Yeah, that's good.
When did you start to realize that in this space of sitting down, focusing on you, identifying the things that have created you to have this mindset of I always need to be searching and becoming somebody, right? Instead of allowing you know, the thing to work for you so you can become nobody, but then also receive the blessings, right? That you want to come your way. What does that space of obscurity look like for you?
Okay, so this is where I have to get vulnerable because I think this is important to admit, and I'm sure like there's a lot of people that may feel this way, but like in the industry, in the news industry at the time, there's this like very comfortable space that you like to receive a lot of, you know, satisfaction and approval from others by just being out in the world, by being present, you know, by being seen everywhere in front of like millions of people. Like there is some type of desire and lust that comes with it. And it's like you don't realize until over time that you love being on this platform. You love being seen. You love, you know, the cadence of having everyone come up to you and be like, oh my God, I've seen you on TV. And so I do think that there was a time where I even told you, I was like, I don't know if I want to transition into this new role because I'm not going to be seen anymore.
Right.
And you're like, why would you think that?
Right.
And I'm like, because I'm not going to be on TV. And you're like, Danielle, you're still going to be on TV just in a different way.
Right.
And so I think that was a real thing for me to realize that this is a real feeling. And I'm like, okay, well, where does this come from? Because like, you know, we talk about this all the time, and you've always said like, get to the root of it, Danielle. Where does being seen and the pleasure of being seen come from? And so I thought about it and I said, you know, maybe it stems from my childhood of presenting all the time, performing. You know, when I was younger, I was a cheerleader for like almost 15 years, and I was in competitive cheer, which is still a sport. So,
yeah, we don't want to go.
Okay, but I'm just saying I was in competitive cheer. And so again, performing and like being in front of thousands of people, like I was just used to that. And people always used to say, like, Danielle, are you ever afraid to like get on camera? And it's like, I may be afraid to speak, but I'm not afraid to like get on, you know, like when the camera's on, I'm like ready. And I've always been ready. People always like, oh, taking pictures, like you're always camera ready. And I'm like, yeah. And I don't know where that comes from until, I think realizing that does come from childhood. So it started with cheerleading, and then as I grew older, I realized like out of all of my siblings, being the youngest, my parents, maybe they didn't realize this, but I felt like they put so much pressure on me being the youngest, doing everything the right way in their eyes, and still performing. So then like you get to your next level, and then, you know, you reach your career point and you're like, well, I've made it on TV. Because even to get to the news industry from college, like that shift was hard. Like that 10 months, woo, Lord Jesus, that was a long time. So like to transition into that, it was like I made it. So to jump from news to like the next point, I was like, it has to be big. And so for me, it was like, okay, well, I stayed in Topeka, and there was this fear of my peers, like everyone that I knew in the news industry. I had a fear that they would be like, I knew she wasn't going to make it. And so there was just all of these thoughts of like, what if, and like being afraid of what people were saying. And I feel like it was really clouding my judgment, because over time I had to realize that where God was taking me was in obscurity. And I remember like going to the Mike Todd conference, and oh my gosh, it was like revival all over again. But that was the first message he preached on. And I think that, and it was in October of 2022. And I remember I came home and I just told you, I was like, I get it now. Like, I understand. And I realized like over time, God was trying to, and he still is, like taking me through obscurity, because in obscurity is development. And so why do you think that you being on a platform, you can develop on stage? Like you can't, like that's not possible. But I think our society, when you are looking at everyone around you and you're like, well, this person's doing it and that person's doing it, and I'm just over here like, and you're telling me to go this way, and you're asking yourself these questions like, why is it not happening for me? And so then I also think I was thinking to myself that, you know, okay, God, you want me to sit still, and I will sit still. But then I was still trying to do things in my own way. And he's like, I don't want you to do anything. I want you to seriously sit here, know my word, know me. Because like you said, when you're looking on the outward of you, then you're not going to see anything else. Like everything else, like on the outward of you is going to fail you. So why look outward when really like what you're looking for is within, and I'm within you. So the season of obscurity is a space where I had to learn that development happens, your character happens, your mind shift happens. And in this space, you can get, you know, just shaped and you can get reformed and redefined. And to be honest, like, I will never regret that season.
Right.
Like, ever. But it was very uncomfortable for me because let's even go even deeper. While I'm being, in my like eyes, demoted, you're getting promoted next to me. Like, my own significant other is like rising to the ranks. So then I started to feel like this jealousy towards you because I'm like, well, you're living in your purpose. Like, what is my purpose? And I even said that to you.
Yeah, you did.
I said that, and I just had to be real because.
But I also think that's where honesty and vulnerability comes in. I think that as you grow as an individual, you have to get to that space where you can be vulnerable. Because if you wasn't able to be vulnerable about that space, to be watching from the sideline and to say, this is happening for you, but it's not happening for me. And as that's not working for me, then I'm living in that space about the I. And we talk about when you're an I, always in survival, right? Always in survival about what I need.
That's true.
Versus what we are.
Right. Together.
Or what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so that creates that space of jealousy and envy and all those other things that come up. But you have to be vulnerable to remove the ego.
Yeah.
Right? To allow somebody to be who they are and living who they are. And knowing that there's different time zones between where someone's supposed to be successful in their time versus your time.
There's different seasons.
And different seasons.
And
absolutely.
Understanding your season. And like, that's something I was even telling my girlfriend the other day, that like, you have to understand what season you're in. Even with us, it was like understanding that like, okay, this is your season where you need me to support you 100%.
Right.
And we talk about all the time that like, even in relationships, there's no 50-50. Like, there's just no such thing. Michelle Obama mentioned it when it came to Barack. She was like, no, whenever he needed me, like, I dropped everything and I supported him. For that time.
Right.
And then when she came in and then she did her thing, he supported her.
Right.
So it's just like understanding your season. Like, we know it's not our season to work out right now. Like, it's our season to like get to the grind, and like, that's just where we're at. But it's not forever. It's just understanding that like, this is the season where I have to support you, and I have to support you not feeling like, you know, like bitter, you know, because I think sometimes too, like, we can do that. We can be like, oh yeah, I support you, but you're like, the way you're saying it, you don't support me.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways that support can look and be in disguise of something else.
Yeah.
You know, like the support can really be disguised as envy or jealousy.
Right.
Depending on how someone carries that in the mind. And I think that's a space of going back to a little bit. You were talking about being in that pressure cooker or being in that space of development, and you said that you would never take it back. But I think it's perception. You know, you talked about how it creates who you are, but it really is creating your personality. You know, like the person that you are truly going to be out in the world. But personality then, like we talk about most times, transition to how you see the world. It's about your perception. And when you can see things from a different perception or a different perspective, then now you start to live different.
Yeah.
And I think that's the space of, when you was talking about the obscurity, being in that space of personal development. We don't really know a lot about that personal development space as much.
I don't think we take it seriously.
No, I mean, because no one's talking about it. Like you said, you go through life and it's all about becoming something. Right?
Someone.
Right, being more professional. But we skip that personal development part of becoming who we need to become in the you. And I think that's an important part of our life that I think sometimes as we talk about overcoming, do we really get in that space? So I think for you, hearing more of that you've got in that space where you're starting to open your perspective or your mind, but letting people hear like how that transition has opened up for you to be able to identify the resources. Because like I said, you could have easily said, this isn't going to get me to where I want to be in my life, because all of my friends are transitioning in the news in this way. But not knowing that there's multiple opportunities that exist in this world, and you get to create them. Right? There's no such thing as luck. Like, we create the opportunity for ourselves. So having a different, because I know we talked about this as well when you was transitioning into AE, you was like, well, I'm not going to be seen as much, and I'm like, but then if you look at it from a different perspective, there's tons of resources and opportunities that could come through this company.
Right.
If you could just see it.
Yeah.
And you couldn't see it at the beginning.
And then like the first week, it was like, everyone was like, oh my God, we're so excited to have you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, they know me. And it's so, I think it's so interesting. Like, yes, I think I'm even having an epiphany that even when you don't understand like what God is doing like for you in this season, like you think that he's trying to demote you, but really he's about to elevate you.
Right.
And so when I got there, it was like the first 2 weeks, it was like he provided me with everything and some, like, and more. And so I'm always like the type of person to say like I'm a firm believer in God and like who he is, and like reminding me that like don't, you know, take your eyes off of me. Like, seek first the kingdom of God, and all things will be added onto you. And so I think around that time, and even till this day, like sometimes when my eyes are taken away from him, that's where I feel discouraged. Like that's where my mind is like fragmented and and like scattered brained, and like it's just all over the place. But when I remind myself of who he is, then he reminds me who I am.
Absolutely.
You know? And so like, so to go back to your question on the significance of personal development, because I think it's different for everyone, but for me, I definitely prayed a lot in that season of obscurity, and still continue to pray, because I think he had to strengthen my prayer and trying to understand his word. Because again, when you are trying to train yourself to, you know, lean to the word and to lean on him, I think it's a requirement, because like the next level, like comes new devils, comes new people. And we think as people that we're ready for this new level. Like, take me, God, like, why not me? Because it's like, you're not ready. Like you, the person, that old version of you is not ready. And so I think like trying to train up a new routine, plus surrounding me with like-minded people, reminding me that like people like you need to read. People read.
So as you're going into some of these things, and I'm sitting here thinking, just think about it, right? You have a seed, right? And you're talking about growing that seed, and it has to come out of the dirt. And you talk about that calcifying, right? Like the to making it strong before you transition it to something else. Right? But as that leaf is growing out of the ground and it's becoming that thing, and it's very fragile as it's coming out of the ground, but surrounding yourself with good people, reading,
pouring into yourself,
right? So that way you can develop and become strong enough to transition to a new level.
I think we're afraid to like pour into ourselves for some reason. Like we're so used to giving. Like I was just telling my girlfriend just last night that like it felt so nice to be still for a weekend. I was like, oh my God, like I need to make this a priority to just be still, because I had to remind myself of my thoughts. Like, and like I had to hear my thoughts.
Your own thoughts.
My own thoughts.
Right.
Not like, because I'm the type of person, like, you know, like I be calling everybody, like on the way to the grocery store, like in my car. I'm like, hey girl, hey mom, like constantly talking.
Right.
But you don't realize, like, just TD Jake said the other day, like you have to literally calm your mind, because like your mind is what you become. And your mind is everything that you see. Before you even like see it, like you think it.
Right.
And so like understanding how significant, and like you told me this like almost ever since we first started dating, that
until
like
you decide to see it.
Until you decide to see it, that your thoughts are so important.
Thoughts become things.
Thoughts become things. And it starts in your mind. And when you realize, like when you truly realize that, because like I think for the longest, like sometimes you'll say things and I don't think I was in the space to receive it. So I think it depends on what season you're in. And then also like understanding, do you even want to receive it?
Well, like I said, I say oftentimes that people can only understand things to the level of their understanding.
Yeah.
So if you're not pouring into yourself, expanding your understanding, well, when something is coming your way, you often miss it.
Right.
And so when me and Orlando, one of my friends, we always talked about, and Les Brown says this all the time, I would rather be prepared for the opportunity than to have the opportunity and not be prepared.
Yeah.
And so what does that unprepared season look like?
Oh my
when
God.
you're not preparing into yourself, like when you're not pouring into yourself.
That's a good question.
Right? So how can you, as people start to grow, I think in essence of, as you are developing yourself, you're preparing yourself to be ready for the opportunity.
Definitely.
Because sometimes opportunity come in a lot of different ways, and we just ignore them and we pass them up because we don't know how to see it.
Yeah.
And that takes personal development.
Definitely.
Right? Becoming more aware.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question to like segment into of what does it look like to not to go into a season unprepared? Like, first of all, I think, again, learning that when you are failing to plan, you are literally going to
plan to fail.
And even just in this, right? Like looking around and seeing this space and seeing where we're at. Like having to prepare for this, even for this episode, I literally had to pray and fast and like, because I wanted to talk about specific things and I wanted to be very direct and very transparent. And so I realized that in order for me to do that, and even in this next level, in this next season, I have to do that even more because like your words like stick with people. And if you're just talking like carelessly, like it's going to come across and people are going to like receive that. But when it came to the studio, when it came to getting all this, together, like I remember you're always like tugging on me, like, don't wait. Like, just do it. Just do it.
Right.
Because you have to prepare yourself. And, I told you, I'm like, okay, well, just because I wanted to be on Good Morning America, it doesn't mean that dream is still not going to come true. Maybe it's in a different, way.
It's a different route.
It's going to be them interviewing me on my talk show. And I've always wanted to have a talk show. And you're like, okay, well, let's, create this podcast in a different way. Let's do it. And so to even have this space, and as I'm in this space preparing for what's coming, this is what preparation looks like. Like these episodes are preparation.
Impact over perfectionism.
Definitely.
And I think sometimes people are in a space where they're trying to make things perfect.
Yes.
Before they actually
I used to be
do,
there.
right?
Yeah.
Like I have to have the perfect camera. I have to have the perfect mics. I have to have all these different things.
In my office space. Remember? I was like, I don't like the way that this looks. Like in my last series, you guys, like definitely go check it out. Because, oh my God, when I was on Zoom, even before that, you're like, well, just do it in the way that you can. Do what you have now.
And then grow.
Yeah. But I think like sometimes, again, going back to this era of social media and what we see, this microwave perfection of I want that and I want it to be like this. But you always have reminded me that all you have is all you need.
Yeah,
and it's all around you.
Is all around you. But the thing that people look at in the microwave effect of thinking is that's why I always tell you when we look at someone who has grown.
Yeah, that's true.
I said, let's go back and look at where they started. Right?
And you can see that growth.
You can see the growth. And so sometimes people don't look at where someone started.
Yeah.
And they only see where they're at, and then they want where they're at, but they don't understand the work that it took to get there. Right? We talk about that. Michael Todd talks about here versus there.
Yes.
But you got to focus on the here and now where you're at. Don't try to get to where someone else is. Focus on where you're at right now and build that.
Here is holy.
Here is holy.
And because here is holy, because God is here is holy. So, okay, I'm going to put this video link in the description, but this is the sermon that also changed my life as well. Last year, Mike Todd preached on Here's Holy, and I remember when I heard it during the time, it was like the beginning of the year, I was like, oh, this is a great sermon. It may not be for me, but it's a great sermon. And then not even realizing that I heard that sermon out of season. And when I had that transition into like this new career I'm in now with AE, that is what that sermon was for, to remind me that like Topeka is holy. Because God is here.
Because you are here.
Because you're here. And so, again, so stop looking elsewhere because you're not going to find it. And so having to get in alignment with God, because realizing that my plans versus his plans was not going to succeed. It doesn't matter like how much I tried to make it happen. He was like, stop trying to work out of my favor and out of my word because I will take my hand off of you. So do you want to have life without me or life with abundance? And so then to realize that here is holy, and here meaning like where you are now. So stop trying to be there, because I was trying to be there and there wasn't going to get me anywhere, like at all.
Right.
And so again, trying to reach for something out of season was not going to work in my favor. And so there had to be a lot of refining in my life. And then like he even says, like, when God wants to refine you, he wants to like shine you in like his own way. And so to realize that I had to stop looking at my season as depression, or as he was doing something like to me, like, no, this is for you, honey, because your character needs to change. I didn't realize how negative I was until I like realized how negative I was, you know?
Yeah.
And to realize how much I was lacking in education and reading, and just where we think we're ready for something until we have it. And when you have it and you realize you're not ready, then you start to like throw your hands up and you're like, okay, use me.
Yeah. Because when that opportunity comes and you're not ready, then things typically fall apart.
Yeah.
And so think about this in this analogy, and your hands being on a clay, like you're molding your perfect pot.
Yeah.
Starts off as a glob of clay.
Yeah.
Right? And you're spinning and you're molding and you're creating, and then you want this perfect pot. But you can't create the pot because you don't possess the skill. You don't have the knowledge.
That's
You
good.
can create a pot and it'll be a bowl, but is it going to have the fine detail
Yeah.
that you really want?
Definitely.
And in order to get there, you have to develop yourself.
Right.
You have to develop the skill. So when an opportunity comes and someone wants that pot that you've created, you can say, I can give you this beautiful pot because I've
Right.
created it. But if you focus on you.
Right.
Now here's another part of that too. The download of that.
Yes.
People can download into you outwardly, right?
Yeah.
Pouring into you, and you listening to everything that everybody else is pouring into you.
Yeah.
And they're telling you, create it like this, create it like this.
Oh my gosh.
You're molding this thing. And you don't even know what you're creating.
Right.
Because you're listening to everybody else until you define and find clarity.
Yeah.
What we talk about. What is it that you want to create?
Yeah.
What type of pot? Is it a pot? Is it a bowl? Is it
a cup?
What is it, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about, Danielle and herself, and, we talk about these 3 E's, education, experience, and environment.
Yeah.
And how those things can shape who you are.
Definitely.
Right? And the ideal of who you want to become, that cultural download, until you like start to really identify who you want to be or what you want to create. How did those 3 E's shape you? And then you identifying that this is more of what I really want for myself, because I found that clarity and identifying the difference between the two.
So I think that's a great question, because I think sometimes we have a fear of like trying different things and many things, because we're told like you're only supposed to do one thing in life and that's the only thing you're supposed to do. But I think you've actually made me feel comfortable in having talent in many things. And so for me, it's like realizing I have a talent in speaking. I have a talent in building. I have a talent in event management. I have a talent in creating flyers. Like, I have many talents, and it's okay to have a stronghold, not a stronghold, but like strength in many things. It doesn't mean you're called to do all things, but like to not be afraid to like put yourself out there. And so I think when it came to me even transitioning into this new walk of life, because I think when I first met you a year ago, and I think it's a very like specific thing to talk about.
Was it a year ago?
Well, like 2 years ago.
Okay.
But like I meant like I guess in my mind when I was talking, I meant like 2 years ago or a year ago. But I met you around George Floyd. And when I first laid eyes on you and you were like looking into my soul,
okay,
I was like, oh, I feel like I'm gonna like see him again, you know? And then a year later, around this specific time, I was called to get involved in the community. And so then I throw myself out there, because there was 2 years when I was here in Topeka and I was just going to work, going home. I wasn't doing anything. Like, I was cool, like being out work, and that was it. But I knew I was called to do more. And so I think when you're known to be called to do more, you can't be afraid to try different things. So I got out there, got involved in the community. And I think, really being surrounded with you led me to getting involved in the right community of people, like-minded individuals, my current career now, my Omni family. And I just love them. So shout out to you guys. But seriously,
Shout out to the Omni family.
shout out to the Omni family, because they have, really protected me in a way that I just didn't expect. And then even to experience many different things in entrepreneurship in my current job right now, I feel like it's really like the 3 E's have molded me into who I am today. And that is learning that I have a calling to help people make an impact where they are. Yeah. So just saying all that to say that I will never take back the season of pruning, the season of obscurity, the season of learning, because preparation is so key to where you're being called to.
So you said pruning. It's the unlearning, releasing the synaptic connections to the old self.
Yes.
Right? And those
it
things
is so critical.
Right. It's critical in the understanding that you have to unlearn to relearn.
To relearn.
Because when you unlearn some of the things that
tradition,
culture, some things that may have put you in a position where you said, this is the only way.
Yeah. And this is like all I know. This is who I am.
Right.
And it's like when you are stuck in this mindset that people say all the time, that's like, well, this is just me. So get it. And that's it. And it's like you are keeping yourself hostage to all the opportunities that are meant for you. Right. And you're never going to see that because you're stuck in this is who I am mentality. And so when you realize that even the culture and the tradition that your parents have taught you, this is the only way I know. I only knew to climb the ladder because that's what I was told.
But do we fault our parents for that, though?
No, we don't.
And the reason, and why don't we? Because sometimes...
Yes, I don't want to say that we put all... Yes, I appreciate you, having me correct myself, because I don't think that we should put all the pressure and the negativity on our parents or the fault on them, because it's not all their fault, because all they knew was what they knew at the time. That's what they know. So it's just you have to love your parents anyways, all the time. And I love my parents for even guarding me and giving me everything I needed. Now, as we grow older, our generation has the significance and the opportunity
and responsibility
to change that. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that we leave our family behind. Right. You have the responsibility to carry your family with you.
Yeah. What we take is, I often say, is what you're saying is that you can't fault anybody, whether it be culture, whether it be family, parents. I think that we're living in an age where things are changing so fast. Yeah. And people are just trying to keep up. And if you don't have this, if you're not a part of this information highway of things, typically, because it's going to get to a point where the knowledge that we have and kids that come behind, they're going to be so far ahead of us that we only going to know what we know. Yeah. And so I think that there's a space where we talk about this transition of releasing and being understanding of what you may need to release and what you need to keep as you are molding into the person that you want to become. Because at some point it does become your responsibility to live life in the way that you desire, but also taking the information, as we often say, you eat the meat and you spit out the bones, right? You can take what's nourishing you as an individual, but then you just kind of, the stuff that's no longer needed, it's okay to let that go. Right. You know what I mean? But I think sometimes culturally, we keep it. And so what are some of the things that you felt like in becoming and overcoming some of these things? What were some things that you felt like were holding you back that you had to let go, even though you felt this is the thing I've always been told? Yeah. And then now that I'm learning, in order for me to transcend to the next level, success at success. Yeah. What do I have to let go, or what did you have to let go to become that next level of you?
I wasn't prepared for this question. I'm just kidding. I'm always prepared, first of all. Okay. But the first thing that came to mind was holding on to the old thinking of that you have to do it this way in your career college, career, and you just continue to climb the ladder. I didn't see any other outside opportunities because it was like, this is the only lane that I know. Until nowadays, people are becoming influencers like, you know, every day, within like 2 to 3 weeks and years. And so to realize like, okay, is this a lane that I should be in? Because first, you know, I'm a believer of prayer. So it's like, trying to understand like, what is it that God has called me to, and is it this lane? And even sometimes till this day, I'm like, wow, I'm being called to this other lane, and it still shakes me because I don't know what this lane is. This is something brand new, and I have to study it every day. I have to study the statistics and the audience and the analytics, like things that I didn't go to school for. So like, to learn a new lane and a new career in a new way, but realizing that like, if this is where I'm called to, then understanding it's going to come into fruition.
Yep. I think you have to live in we have to be okay with living in the unknown. Even if these two things go together of like becoming nobody, but also living in the unknown. And because if you know everything, right, how are you going to transition to something else if you already know it?
That's true.
Right.
And I think that was my second point of like, something I had to truly overcome was being in the fear of being known, right? Like, am I saying that right? Being in the space of being known.
Right.
Because like, again, I was raised with all the attention was on me. Then getting to high school and, you know, to cheerleading and like every levels of my life, the attention was always on me. And to get to this new space to say like, well, the attention is no longer on you. And sometimes I think that is a real feeling that a lot of females have. It's like, we don't know how to handle it. And it's okay to say that like, this is what I'm used to. So
you have a problem with not being the most attractive person in the room or the person that gets all the attention? I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, I think that's a real thing. I think that it's okay to be always seen as a person that people want to admire. Like, it's okay with being just. You know, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
And so I think in this world today, people are trying to live beyond the just. They just... You just have to be.
Right. And
so when you are being who you are, then your light will shine. People will see it. And they will also see when you're trying too hard. You know, and I think that that's where some of these things where we're living in a space where everybody is trying to be, but those who are succeeding are being who they are authentically. Right. And the world is seeing that light.
Right.
And that's what people desire.
And that's where I want to be.
Right.
And I think that is where I'm called to. And I feel like anytime I feel like I'm being someone else, I remove myself. Or if I'm involved with a certain group of people, friends, even in friendship, I feel like I had to put on this show and performance to fit into their friend group.
Right.
And it's like, okay, honey, we are too old for this. Like, we don't need to do this anymore. We're not in, high school or middle school or anything. Like, we're good.
So all of this information is good, and I think that's where we really want to be able to go. But I think one of the things that will be really, powerful as people are growing is, we talk about it a lot in this, philosophy that we're putting together. But you talk about being your old self and transitioning to this new self. And sometimes I think we tell people to do a certain thing, but we don't give them the tools
to do it.
Right? So how do you define transitioning? Like, what are some of the things that you had to do to transition from this old way of thinking, maybe of some things that you have been told that you had to do or be, to this new way of thinking, to where there's information that you've gained, to where you're saying, I can receive that information, but I also can take what I'm also learning, and transitioning into a new person. Like, what does that look like for you?
For me, I had to realize, like, what works for me is getting my thoughts out. I think for me, I had to realize that I'm the type of person that thinks about way too much. And I think I've even told you this. I'm like, I am a dark thinker, and it's uncomfortable, but like, where did that stem from, right? And so realizing even too that why am I this way? So I would like ask myself certain questions, and I would like really evaluate myself. If I saw something that I was like, well, this is just who I am. Because I think when I first met you, I was like, well, this is just who I am. And you're like, but why? And like you would ask me constantly, like, get to the root. And I'm like, this is just me. And so then it made me really evaluate and say, like, where did I get this thinking? Where did that come from? And so I really do think that I took the time by journaling and asking even my family questions about, you know, why am I this way? Where did this come from? So really like stemming to childhood, because that is where it starts.
Where you're created.
It's where you're created, and like you have to go back. And I think it's a very prominent conversation that many people are having, mental health, anxiety, fear. It's something that our generation is really bringing up in almost every conversation. And I think that's so key, because we were, you know, I was raised during that time where like, you know, what happens in this house stays in this house. And like, that's just what it is. But why? And do we have to abide by it anymore?
But why? No.
But why? So just journaling and getting to the root. And I got to the root by asking questions to the right people, right? To specific people. And for me, it was my parents, and it was maybe like even my close friends that I grew up with, and asking them about my character and like, have I always been this way? And how did that make you feel? And like kind of talking through those
That's
things.
a real thing. Like, do we really ask our people or our friends,
our peers,
our peers, or just those who are around, you know,
people that you trust?
what are they? Yeah, right, yeah.
Because you can't be asking everybody.
Well, I think sometimes you can receive that information as well. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's eat the meat and spit out the bones. But you want to know how people feel about you in all capacities.
Yes,
you know, because
that is true.
The more you can, you get an ideal of how people see you on the outside versus what you're projecting on the outside, from what's coming and developing within. Sometimes you can't always see it. And I think it's good to, you know, just to check yourself and do the self-evaluation, to ask people like, am I this person? What do you see? I do that often. You know, I think we were just in the space, and I'm like, hey, do I come off as this type of person?
Way.
Because I want to know how I can do it better. And so I think that there's a couple of things as we're transitioning, and I tell people, as you're mentioning, going into your thoughts, and those thoughts create, like you said, an emotion of who you are and how you project. But then do you check that thought and how it creates that emotion? Or is that emotion creating the thought? Right? And so we talk about think, act, and feel. If you are acting, and feeling the same way, you're going to get the same result.
Even thinking about, thinking about even that time when I was like in depression, right? I think it's something that we put a label on. I'm not, you know, trying to put down or saying that that's not a real like symptom or anything, because I do think that it's something that people go through, but I think we also have the power within us to get out of it. It's a choice that you make.
It's a feeling.
It's a feeling.
Yeah, it's a feeling that we don't really know what to do with sometimes.
And so I think for me, when I was in that state, I think it was because of what I was telling myself, and I was telling myself the wrong things. You know, it was like, oh, you're inadequate, or, you know, you're incapable. And it's just, you know, again, looking outwardly rather than looking inwardly. And I think that sometimes we put ourselves in our own state of mind by not being mindful of what we're listening to, who we're listening to, the environments we're in, and everything around us, like not realizing that like you have the power and the control to remove yourself from the environments, the things you're listening to. If you're constantly listening to rap or watching certain shows that give you fear, you know, like that is what's keeping you in that state of mind. So understanding that like you have the power within, and it takes time. I'm not saying like I woke up one day and was like, I'm going to decide to be powerful. It just takes time. And understanding that like, okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel inadequate? Well, I feel inadequate because I wasn't confident in what I was doing. Why am I not confident in what I'm doing? Because I wasn't taking it seriously. Why was I not taking it seriously? Because I was not preparing myself. So it's like literally asking yourself each question along the way.
And getting back to the root.
And getting to the root.
And then so that way, I think the clarity, and when you get to the root, you can find your clarity on where you want to go.
Yeah.
I think that's where we don't, sometimes we have these two routes that we say we want to go. Are you moving towards your greater self, or are you just going towards this mediocre version of you?
Yeah.
And so if you want to be your greatest version, you have to be intentional, right?
Yes.
And so
the word of the year.
Yeah, it's intentional, right? That's what we talked about. So I think that this has been good. I think as we continue to talk about helping people transition and overcoming, it is a space, right? It's a space to develop. It's a space to learn. It's a space to identify who you are. And you'll probably hear it more and more from the people that are moving through this podcast, and they're identifying the things that they had to overcome as the things that they had to learn about themselves. I don't know if you can really truly overcome who you are and the things that you do until you take a look at yourself. Yeah. Right? Because if you don't know what you were doing to get you in that space, how are you going to transition out of it?
Okay, let's talk about really quick. But you just talked about like overcoming yourself, right? Even the exercise. Remember the exercise we did?
Which one?
In the mirror?
Okay, yeah.
And how even that is significant.
Yeah.
And I think we should really encourage people to do that.
Yeah. So I think we talk about seeing yourself. Yeah. Can someone look at themselves in the mirror and identify who they truly are, or who they want to be? Can you say, I am bold, I am confident, I am bold, I am a leader,
I love you.
Oh, I love you. Meaning, look at the person in the mirror. Michael Jackson, right? Man in the mirror. Can you look at the person in the mirror and identify that you can love that person that you see? Yeah. And it is so amazing to realize how many people can't.
I was there.
And so I think that's a space of, when you get to the space of loving who you are, loving the person that you project out to the world, and knowing that your intentions are good. Right. Then that creates a different space. And I think this is where I think we just have to do a better job as, people, and having that support system, because you can't do it by yourself. Yeah. You can do a lot of things on your own, but if you want to be great, as they talk about those old African adages, if you want to go far, or if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You want to go with people.
Definitely.
Things are tribal. And so we want to be around good people. And so,
because you can't do this life alone, and I don't think you should. So I just want to say, like, really lastly, like, I love what we're creating. I love that it's built with people, on God, but with people, and it's to create impact and legacy. And so I love that, and I love that it's, about personal and professional development, and even Omni in itself. And I know, this is where you can give your, marketing tag out, I guess we'll have it on the episode. But just even giving props and really respect to Omni and how this organization has really, really transformed my life in so many ways. And like I said, I don't know if this would have happened in a bigger city. I don't know if I would have ran into something similar, or what that would even look like. And I don't even want to know what that would look like, because I'm here, I accept it, and I love it. And so I think that is what's beautiful about our organization, is that it's for people. It's to help them grow, elevate, but also to just remind them that, we're here for you. And so Omni has constantly been here for me, showed up every single year. Many people know that, like, being without a family, that is a lot in itself. And, like, you relate to that because, your family just came first time in many years. So we're both out here just building. Sometimes it feels alone away from family, but then we have created our own.
Yeah, community is family, right, to some degree. We have our immediate families, our blood families, but then I grew up in a community where I say everybody knew everybody. Yeah. And I love that aspect about being around people. And so there's support that you can get from more than just your immediate family. You can get support from your community. And as we grow as individuals, the more support that we get, sometimes the further up the ladder we get to go. because people can support you. They make you feel good about what you're doing. You build your self-confidence. You get to try things on people as you're working with different individuals. You get supported through all these different individuals that you're working with right now in the community. And so it's community. And I think that's a piece that society is sometimes moving away from. We're not working with each other as much. And so as we continue to build, like I said, it is a space where, one, we have to change our mindsets about how we work together and how we build as a people in community. But two, it is about developing yourself, finding the power from within, and then you becoming your greatest self. And then learning the principles and the philosophies that can get you there as we grow and build together. So this has been great, Danielle. I appreciate
it all out?
I think you did. I think you did. And I think as we talk about people learning from these experiences, this is what it's about. Even in community, it's like talking about the things that we don't talk about as much. It's learning about the things that we don't learn about. And you know, I've heard many people say, I'm learning from what I'm hearing in that podcast, even though you might not realize that you're touching somebody in that capacity, but you are. Because people need these conversations in community.
Definitely.
And so this is hopefully that you all can take what you learned from some of these podcasts today and throughout the series, and hopefully it helps you overcome who you are overcoming. So thank you, Danielle, for joining me on this special episode of Behind the Spotlight in the Overcoming series. Is there anything that you want to say to the people before we get out of here?
First of all, I just want to say that it's weird sitting over here in the chair. Now I know how everyone feels.
You're in the hot seat.
I know, right? In the hot seat. But I just want to say thank you for definitely supporting and growing with me, because when I just say that this is just the beginning of where God is taking us, I'm super excited. And in case you don't know, in case you don't realize, but this podcast is really supposed to do three things: educate, entertain, and empower you to help you become the better version of yourself. Again, I'm Danielle J Martin, and I'm here to help you make an impact where you are. So I hope that you can join me along in this journey, because it's going to be a beautiful one. And I just want to say too, lastly, hearing you say that, people are tapping in and people are definitely giving this a support, and even hearing the overwhelming messages of this has helped me do this. And it's like, I just cherish that so deeply, because out of all people, like, to do this, it's always like a step away from fear. Like, we're growing closer and closer towards like the confidence of living in the light. And so even being on here and trying to share this story, I was like, I don't know what this is going to be, but I was like, you know what, like, this is me boldly. So accept me freely. And I'm not going to ever say I have all the answers, but I can always guide you in the right direction. And, even TD Jake said that, like, people who are great are perfectionists and they're never going to be satisfied. And I'm like, I'm never really going to be satisfied.
But you don't have to be, as I said, in essence of that, we don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We just have to be a doer in life, and things will be provided to you as you do the good work.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you're never going to be satisfied, because you always want to see yourself grow and develop. And that's just the journey, right? Success. We want to keep growing once we hit a level of success.
Yeah.
But we don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We don't have to be perfect.
You just got to do it.
Just got to do it.
And continue, okay? Continue towards where you're trying to go.
Yep.
We love you, sisterhood.
So thank you all for joining us on this episode of Behind the Spotlight podcast, the Overcoming series. We hope that you guys join us for more series Behind the Spotlight and enjoying Danielle J Martin. So thank you for also allowing me to be the host today. So see you guys next time. Be on the lookout for more things to come.
Solid.